Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, everyone's feeling a bit more refreshed and energized and ready for the second half of the day. I would like to, I'm Dr. Dhanushya Begunavardhana from the School of Biotechnology and Biomolecular Sciences in the Faculty of Science, and I have the great privilege of hosting this discussion panel on education for sustainable development. Now, I don't think it's anything new to the audience here or anything I have to restate, but just to set the scene for our panel discussion this afternoon, as you all know, we are faced with the triple crisis of climate change, pollution, loss of biodiversity, together with the challenges of economic crisis and social inequalities. Unfortunately, sustainability is not an issue at the periphery anymore, but it's at the core of most of the global initiatives, and it's not surprising that it's not the case in higher education as well. I think any and all education conferences that I've been to recently, regardless of what disciplinary context it was in, SDGs or education for sustainability has been one of the key topics that's been addressed. And that's because as educators, it's our responsibility to make sure that the future leaders, innovators, scientists, citizens in general are equipped with the necessary skills and knowledge to navigate these issues, but also find solutions to these challenges. So being a university, UNSW is well placed to address some of these challenges to make sure that we provide an education that equips our students with these exact skills. And there have been quite a lot of work that's already been done in this space. And I'm joined by a panel of champions who've been doing this for a while. And so I have the great privilege of introducing Dr. Natalie Oh, a senior lecturer from the School of Banking and Finance. We have Associate Professor Bryce Kelly from the School of Biological, Earth and Environmental Sciences. We then have Dr. Veronica Jiang, a senior lecturer in the School of Marketing. We have Dr. Jonathan Fox, a senior lecturer in the School of Built Environment. And then last but not the least, we have Dr. Ruth Fisher, a senior lecturer from the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering. So to get us started, without going into too much detail because we'll have a chance for that, can I please ask each and every one of you to give a brief introduction to the sort of work that you've been doing in this space in your disciplinary context. If it's all right, Ruth, we might start with you.
There you go. Thank you. Hello.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hi. I, as Dhanushi said, am from the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and I'm pretty lucky that I get to teach a lot of the environmental sustainability courses, which are much more fun than some of the maths ones. And when I've been teaching those subjects, they're typically for either postgrads or final year students in undergrads. And we were really noticing there wasn't a lot of, I suppose, knowledge of the SDGs in particular, but also a lot of the broader sustainability concepts. So that has caused us to want to really understand what is the coverage of the SDGs in our programs. So with that, we've been doing some mapping activities. If you were in the workshop this morning, you would have found out a lot about that. But we've been really aiming to understand what is the coverage, how does it relate to particularly our course learning outcomes, but using this as a first step to start those conversations with academics to say, what are we teaching? What do the students need to know? How does this relate to our course content? And so then hopefully we'll be able to have a beautifully scaffolded program where information can build over the years, and the identity of the students is really that they understand all of the different ways they can contribute through meeting the SDGs.
Thanks, Ruth. Coming to you, Jonathan.
Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Fox from the Built Environment School, Arts, Design and Architecture. I convene an undergraduate course in the Bachelor of Architecture Studies program, and I convene and teach into the Masters of Architecture course. It's clearly a no-brainer that architecture has a huge impact on environmental sustainability. For years now, architects have designed their buildings with ecologically sustainable design principles in mind. But what's happened more recently is that the profession has taken a renewed interest in environmental performance practice. The accrediting body, the Architects Registration Board, introduced a new set of standards of competency for architects in 2021. And they introduced professional practice requirements around environmental performance and particularly carbon. So one of the criteria is to explicitly understand the carbon impacts of building design, and for students to understand the carbon impacts of their design decision making. This has been quite a novel introduction. And fortunately for us, our Masters of Architecture program has recently gone through an accreditation review in 2023. So we were forced to redesign several components of the Masters of Architecture curricula to meet these new national standards of competency. And perhaps I'll talk more about that later on. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Veronica Jiang. I'm from School of Marketing Business School. What we have done, and similar to science and engineer, is that we, in our school, we take a systematic approach. We're trying to embed SDG educations in every marketing course in our school. So here is what we have achieved. We put in SDG education in 37 courses, and over like 15,000 students going through the marketing courses from last year to this year have been learning about SDGs alongside with the marketing knowledge. Okay, so we can say that 80% of the weeks have the SDG related contents, and 73 assessments have SDG related contents as well. So if you are interested, you can scan the QR code for more details, and I do have a store down the hall as well.
Before we come to you, Bryce, can I just check with the audience that you can hear us okay? Yeah, I understand because of the setup there are conversations going on at the back, but okay, we're good. Thanks, Bryce. Over to you.
Hello, I'm Associate Professor Bryce Kelly. I specialise in the measurement of greenhouse gases and groundwater management. I teach first year investigating Earth and its evolution, and in second year I teach Earth systems and sustainability. So I've recently renamed the courses and changed a whole lot of the content in order to incorporate a lot more on SDGs, and when I present my slide I'll link all that in. But there was a perfect example in the New York Times this morning. The number one thing to improve, to take people out of poverty is to give them cheap energy. But in order to get cheap energy, you need to find the new mineral resources, the copper, the lithium, for our modern energy systems. So where do you find the copper and the lithium and other critical elements. Well, if you have an understanding of the evolution of Earth and Earth systems, then you know where to find these resources and have a minimal impact. So that was the perfect lead-in, I thought, in the New York Times today as to why I teach first-year Earth science students and have rebadged it, Investigating Earth and its Evolution, because you need to understand the evolution of everything in order to have impacts in sustainability.
Hi everybody. My name is Natalie O, and I'm also from the business school. I think Veronica and I are very lucky in the sense that we are here to present our work. But shout out to all the business academics who've done a wonderful job in integrating SDG. Veronica and I have a stall, but we've got George down there. Hi, George, who also has a booth over there representing business on how we do SDG, educate SDG in our business school. For me, the reason why I'm up here is because I embed SDG in extracurricular activities and also as a standalone module. Really taking students outside the exam stress, really instilling intrinsic motivation and to really get them to think about this in a most responsible way, and to partner with student societies. And we've got student representatives down there at the booth, as well as community groups and the corporates, so that we have an ecosystem, so that it's not just something that's education module, but we have to work together to tackle this SDG. So that's where I'm at. So I'll be talking about how I embed SDG into extracurricular activity, as well as a standalone module in combating gender equity issue. Because this is something everyone knows it's an issue, but I don't think higher education really educates students on this matter, especially when it comes to putting that into practice. So we have an education module educating students on this issue so that they can be well prepared and integrate this issue into their career planning. And that's what I'll be presenting on the lightning talk as well as the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Hopefully that gives an idea of the breadth and the depth of the experience that our panel brings to this discussion. Before we go any further with the types of work that have been done, the pedagogy and the nitty-gritty of education, a bit of a philosophical question to the panel. So obviously it's not a question if sustainability or education for sustainability is important, but the why might be different depending on the disciplinary background that you're coming from. As we know, there are three main constructs to sustainability: societal, economical, and environmental. And so in this context, the disciplinary background might have a different contribution to the three contributors. So more broadly, my first question to the panel, more broadly sustainability, but very specifically from your disciplinary context, why do you think it's important that we bring in SDGs or concepts around sustainability into our education? And why is it important that we think about how we embed these concepts, but also assess these in our students? Would you like to start, Natalie?
I think coming from business school, I think we get a lot of blame because corporates are greedy and that we ignore this SDG issue for sake of profitability. And hence, whilst that can be part of the explanation, however, I think we have a heavy burden in business school to really educate students how to do business responsibly. And we've got prime responsible management education where we really educate students to do business responsibly. And for me, I suppose, although I'm from business school, I'm from School of Banking and Finance. And finance industry is very male-dominated industry, and hence I wanted to develop a module to educate students on this gender equity issue, because corporates keep on saying, Natalie, can you send us females? And I'm thinking, we are sending you females, but you're not able to retain. Then how do we, with that information, educate students so that they know how to combat and overcome those obstacles? And hence there was that gender equity module that I created. And also the business has been crying out saying, you know, we want students to do things responsibly. How are you educating students on this? And so I partnered with Google in educating students from get-go, from first year, thinking about sustainability and tackling whether it's SDG issues from early on. So I think, you know, our business school, we are teaching our students to do business responsibly, and that's in all aspects.
I think that was an interesting point that you raised about the need to think about sustainability more broadly as well, rather than, while it's important to focus on the different goals, thinking about it more broadly as a topic as well. Thank you. Coming to you, Bryce, when you're ready.
Okay, so I get it easy with the students that I have to teach. I'm in earth and environmental science. I can't think of a single one of the SDGs that doesn't link back to the use of earth resources or how we've affected the earth systems. So I just simply need to introduce the students to the connections and enlighten them pathways, and I'll show you with my slide, with careers and the likes. So they don't realise that they're coming to do a degree that links tightly to the Sustainable Development Goals, but I make sure they leave my courses knowing that they are very closely linked to having a huge impact throughout their careers that will influence where we go with sustainability.
I highly echo what Natalie talking about responsible business. I think that is actually the trend currently in the business world and also in the society. That we can say that the governments have now made the ESG report mandatory in Australia, in UK, United States, right? So all these mandatory or legal requirements are trying to push the business to do business responsibly, right? So also there's a lot of criticism about capitalism. But what we want to teach students is responsible capitalism and progressive capitalism. And also, that's the first thing. So it's kind of like a trend in the society, in the business. The second thing is that we want to give students the meaning of learning, right? So we have brilliant students. We have the most brilliant students in Australia and attracted a lot of brilliant students internationally as well. They come for us. For what? Knowledge is one thing. A lot of knowledge can be done online. Another thing is that can we give them some meaning of their life, right? Learning about SDG, contributing to the society can help them shape the meaning of their life and the meaning of their learning. So whenever I talk about that we embedded SDGs into our marketing courses, and the students say that, oh, I really found this course very meaningful, very inspiring, right? So that's the takeaway message that I want students to get from learning about SDG and contributing to the society.
Thank you. Thanks. The question was asked a while ago, so I'm going to try and answer it as well as I can remember it. I think there are two scales of interest for architects. The one is the macro scale with mega trends of urbanization, decarbonization, and digitization. And I think any program that doesn't equip its future students, its current students and future citizens with graduate attributes to engage with those three mega trends, well, there's a problem with that model then. So that's the macro level. At the sort of disciplinary scale, well, buildings have an enormous impact environmental impact on the built environment, the environmental impact, on a carbon impact, and it's incumbent on us as educators of future architects to ensure they're aware of those environmental impacts of their building design decisions. So our course is strongly aligned with SDG 13, with climate action, and with SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. We not only address the more technical components, which is around embodied carbon evaluations or life cycle assessments or environmental impact, but we look at also social impact. So for example, under SDG 11, sustainable cities, there's reference to both social and physical heritage. So we often now include adaptive reuse. So we're looking at our building stock and we're thinking we can't build more, we have to build less and build smarter. And so we looking to adaptive reuse, which has obviously a strong social component because there's history and social value in existing building environments that we have to address. There's also another component of sustainable cities, and that's, for example, making our public spaces accessible to all, which we obviously try and educate our students in architecture around public space design. So we address both the macro and the disciplinary aspects of sustainable development, which we think are relevant for our future graduates.
So with engineering, there's probably a lot of commonalities with architecture. For graduate engineers, there's a requirement that they are fluent in sustainability as a concept, but also how they can design it and incorporate it into their work. And also problem solve and be able to look at a solution and say, is this a good solution or a bad solution? So these, in terms of accreditation, that's dictated by Engineers Australia, and that's one of their expectations for graduate engineers, to be able to have that literacy. More broadly, when we talk about the role of education and engineering and the importance of sustainability, much like architecture with the design of buildings, engineers, particularly civil, where I'm situated, designing infrastructure. Infrastructure is long-lived. The things that we're designing now are going to be here 70, 100 years in the future. So really there's an expectation and a need that the design decisions that we're making now are really forward-thinking. And in order to really encompass that and be able to use our traditional problem-solving skills, which are what we deliver for our students, but we need to be able to embrace that complexity, which is sustainability more generally. But sustainability is such a broad term and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So the way that you actually do that can get pretty difficult to be consistent. So in my mind, the SDGs are a useful way that you can kind of look at actioning sustainability. It's obviously not the answer to everything, but it's a nice way that it really represents the breadth of what is sustainability, particularly for engineers, where maybe we focus more in our technology and ignore some of the ones above. But also it has indicators. So we need the data and we need the actual numbers which you can incorporate into your designs with our problem-solving skills. So I think the SDGs in particular are a really useful framework that we can use to introduce students to this concept, this amorphous concept that is sustainability.
Thanks, Ruth. I'm not sure if it's the case for everyone on the stage as well, but I have trouble continuously hearing all the conversations because I think the speakers are projected that way. Is that the I don't know. But I think in general, what I'm hearing is that overall the approaches that you're thinking about or why the importance of embedding SDGs, the solutions that you're thinking about, is not just taking a Band-Aid approach to address because it's a global issue, but rather thinking about ways of integrating at the core of the education we provide at UNSW, which is amazing to see. And just in for the benefit of the audience as well as for a discussion, because you've been in this space for quite a long time, it might be helpful for us to hear about, because as you mentioned in your individual, I guess, introductions, the way you approach is quite different in different faculties, but also in different disciplines. Would you be able to share some examples of how you've gone about either directly teaching sustainability or sustainable development goals or planetary health, or however the context that you address the issue, but also gone about curriculum design and also thought about assessment a little bit? Who would like to start?
I think he's asking me to start, so I'll start. So, like I was saying, so one of the first things for the UNSW Challenge for First Year is that it started in 2020, just before COVID started, because it was launched in 2020, so we did all the so-called design in 2019. The reason why we decided to do as an extracurricular or co-curricular is because we really wanted to take students outside the course exam pressure. We didn't want students to tackle this problem just for the grades, because their creativity won't be there, their intrinsic motivation won't be there. So we said, how do we instill intrinsic motivation into students from early on, from first year, to tackle these SDGs and start thinking about it, so as they progress to second, third, and fourth year, they'll be more advanced in thinking about how do I do this responsibly, or how do I do the business responsibly. So we did take them out, and so those people that signed up to this extracurricular, we partnered with student societies on global consulting group, which they actually train students on how to crack a case, how to do presentation skills, and how to put up your arguments logically. And so by partnering with student society, we have this peer-led learning where students feel quite safe that they don't need to talk to a lecturer, but they do talk to someone that's close at their age range. And obviously, we want to have corporates involved where they give feedback on their presentation and their solution to the problem. And how our curricula is unique is we not only partner with corporates, but we actually partner with community groups. They are the ones that come and say, this is our problem. Last year, we had Hunter Renewal come in and said, we've got this big trench that's there as a result of mining. What do we do about that as a community? How can we fill this void for the community? And this year we had Snowy Hydro come in. And when you think about Snowy Hydro, it's renewable energy. We think, wow, that's great. But their problem was, how do we engage with students? Oh, sorry, not students, community. Because after the Snowy project is finished, what happens to the community after that? When everyone leaves that region because the project's done, what happens to those small businesses now that all the employees are gone? So, these type of questions that I didn't even think about, because when I thought renewable, wow, that's great. But now students have to think about what's the impact after this project's done to the community. And from first year, they get to think about that. So as they progress in their years, in any assignments that they do, they'll be thinking all the stakeholders, not just doing it for grades. What will the lecturer think about this, and how can I get HD? It's now thinking about the community, thinking big scale. And so we've got this problem-based learning that is refined, because now the community is coming to give a problem. And we've got peer-led learning, which is part of the design, where students feel much, much safer and feel much more at home as I learn about this problem-solving skills and presentation skills and communication skills. I think I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll talk about gender equity when I do my lightning talks.
I think that was a great, very interesting and relevant point that you raised as well, because it's not just about getting the concepts across, but also involving the best pedagogical approaches, whether it's problem-based learning or such. So, yeah, thank you.
Can you bring my slide up? Okay, I'm going to talk to the slide. Is there a mouse? How do we move the... You got a mouse? Okay. No mouse. Okay, I'll just talk to the slide. Just to give you a bit of a guide. So, starting at the top, I have an enthusiastic student, and I'm teaching them about Earth systems, and I'm just going to focus on the carbon cycle, but I do water and atmospheric and all sorts of things. At the beginning of most of my lectures, I actually introduce a job advertisement which shows the career skills that they need. So I'm linking the lecture to a CV tick. And I also link it into a policy or legislation, which is why the consulting companies want people with these skills and why they're trying to address some need, especially in carbon space. I also take them on a journey with my research and use a lot of my research case studies in my lecture material. And a lot of my research is policy-focused science. I'm trying to get the new data sets that will nudge for change and then influence the policy and legislation. And last year I had an honours student who did work which actually fed into the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Legislation Review. The students aren't aware of all the careers that they've got in carbon management. Carbon management is globally around about $950 million as a carbon economy already, and it's only going to get bigger. So they don't know that you've got the careers in the corporate and finance institutions, government, consulting industry, NGOs, and in research. So from taking a student who wants to bring about change, I lead them on a journey of understanding Earth systems and then linking it into a very relevant journey with a career, and that motivates them to learn the material and to engage in bringing about change.
Thanks, Bryce. I think that was another key point, and also probably the very first competency in sustainability published by the UN, the importance of thinking holistically, the systems thinking. So, yeah.
I think thinking systems, thinking the interconnections of everything, absolutely everything, and knowing too that they want to have a career which is, for them, satisfying and it will have an impact. And the sustainability journey is a long one. We have so far to go at a global level.
Absolutely.
And you can work with that with the students. You can actually see them engage in that, in their problem-solving growth, and then they're coming to me and then talking about career options. And it's a big pleasure to have mentored so many students into careers in this sector. So students now in carbon management, working for the United Nations Environment Program, working for the New South Wales Decarbonisation Program, all these pathways. And so that's pretty cool for a career to be able to say, hey, these students are going out and having an impact. I mean, that's what education's about.
And like you were saying, I mean, the process of, you know, education for sustainability is still a learning process for everyone. So the approaches that we take, like the specific approaches, will evolve over time, but the fundamentals is going to apply to anyone and any discipline as well, isn't it? It's going to be consistent. Thank you, Bryce. Coming to you, Veronica.
Yes. So the question is, give examples about SDG education in the courses?
Yeah, some of the ways that you've approached education.
Yeah. So in marketing courses, that we have embedded SDG education in all marketing courses. And I checked, guess which SDG is most talked about in marketing courses? Anyone have thoughts? which SDG is most talked about SDG in marketing courses? 13, climate change. No, sorry. I know that's your area. What? 12. Okay, that's close, getting close. 12 is responsible consumption and responsible production. We actually do talk that a lot in marketing courses, because in marketing courses, we're talking about consumer behavior, we're talking about companies making responsible production and manufacture. We do talk about that, but that's not the number one, that's number two. The number one, the most talk about SDG in marketing courses is innovation, industry innovation, number 9, okay? So actually you would find it surprising, but in marketing, and I guess also in information system courses, in management courses, and in a lot of business courses, we do talk a lot about innovation, entrepreneurship, designing new products, right? So whenever that there's designing electric cars, or involved about batteries, right? So we do talk a lot about that. It's all involved in this industry innovation, okay? So that's number one takeaway that you can have. Another good example is that how we embed SDGs into our courses and assessments, right? So in marketing, we do ask students to write marketing plans. Now I asked students, then I partnered with different organizations. I guess a lot of business schools, and Natalie, you may do so as well. I know you do partner with different organizations. I do partner with different organizations. And one organization I partner with is Nova Employment. So Nova Employment is a non-for-profit organization that helps people with disability to find jobs. Then my assessment to students is that form more groups and write marketing plan for this NGO, right? So then that kind of integrate SDG education into their knowledge creation as well. So this NGO, they get student ideas about how to get good marketing plan and improve their marketing practice. And also students learn about people with disability and also learn about how to do marketing plan at the same time. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, back to architecture. In the undergraduate, so we have 2 programs in architecture. There's a general undergraduate degree, a Bachelor of Architectural Studies, which is a 3-year degree. It has a fairly broad student cohort. I'd say 80% of them go on to a Masters of Architecture, but it does attract other students who are just exploring design in the built environment. In that program, the courses I teach align quite strongly with SDG 13, which is around climate action, where we introduce literacy of climate change, and we look at essentially building energy efficiency. So we look at operational energy as the framework, and then we investigate that through some technical components of daylighting, thermal comfort, and other aspects of building design. At that stage of the course, it's really just, it's a framework, it's an introduction, it's a literacy, and it's a broader conversation aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. But we don't get into indicators or quantifying or targets. And then in the Masters of Architecture, we have the opportunity of exploring SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, as well as climate action. And there we explicitly quantify the embodied carbon of the building design decision-making. So we introduce embodied carbon as an assessment criteria. Students are required to evaluate the embodied carbon of their building designs using software applications. That can be an entire building carbon evaluation. It can be a component of that building. It could be a substitution of, say, steel for concrete or timber, or it could be one aspect of the building, a room or several rooms. We try not to limit, the purpose is engagement with this criteria, so we try not to limit exactly how far or the extent of their engagement, but we provide support through digital tools and software to enable them to explore their designs at the early stage of design to make the right decisions. We also then address a qualitative aspect of sustainable cities and communities through providing a choice of architectural streams. So the Masters of Architecture students don't just design one building, they have a choice of going into 4 streams which cover housing, social agency, high performance, and urban conditions. And so those are aligned with more social impact aspects of sustainability. We get students to understand, to develop a social program for some of their buildings. So they might deal with housing disadvantage, they might deal with some social issue. We also obviously embed First Nations and caring for country is a very important criteria in architectural design. That is a new discipline, a new area of practice for the profession. And that is really sort of an emerging frontier of architectural design. Beyond the sort of symbolic expression of First Nations, it's an attempt to engage more meaningfully in what caring for country design might look like. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So in our school, there's kind of 2 different approaches that we take when we're talking about sustainability in education. With the first one, it's the real project-based learning, and students are presented with a realistic project, and they have to use sustainability as one of their design criteria. And these are really important tasks. They're kind of scaffolded throughout the program. In our final year, we have a course called Planning Sustainable Infrastructure. And in that, students are required to, first of all, determine what are their sustainability criteria that is important to their group. They can be informed by SDGs, as well as current context, other sustainability frameworks, such as Envision, ISCA, all of these relevant things in order to say, what is the standard that I need to aim for? What do we need to measure? So then they can incorporate that into their problem solving, which will hopefully be what they will be doing in reality in industry. The other approach that we take is for the subjects which are explicitly focused on sustainability assessment. And in that, the entire premise of this subject is how do you measure sustainability, and that the students have a fluency with how to use different tools such as carbon footprinting, life cycle assessment, different environmental footprints. But more importantly, they understand limitations of those approaches, where they're appropriate to use and how they should be. So again, in terms of assessments for those, we get them to do it. And then obviously learning by doing is really beneficial. One last thing to add on with that is an activity that I did the other day in one of my classes. And this was in a sustainability assessment class. And because the students are all from lots of different disciplines within civil engineering, rather than focus on one of the SDGs and a specific target, we had an activity where they actually were encouraged to use generative AI to say, which of these indicators would I be most placed to meet and address? So if they were studying transport engineering, they might get something in 11. Or if they were studying water engineering, they'd learn about something in 6. And so this was a way that they could really look at their identity as an engineer and start linking that with the SDGs, and where hopefully they'll be able to have lots of impact in the future.
I think that was very helpful to hear, from different perspectives. different approaches to incorporating these important concepts, but also skills, and also different ways one might go about assessing the concepts. Did anyone else have any thoughts on how you approach the evaluation of skills associated with sustainability in your courses? Would you like to add anything? Evaluation or assessment, yes.
Sorry, evaluation or assessment, because mine's co-curricular, there's no assessment per se, but they are put in front of industry judges as well as academics when they present their so-called solution to the live case. I think the impact, if I can talk about the impact of the design that we've made, that is where we've got revised problem-based learning as well as peer-led learning. The fact that for co-curricular, extracurricular activity, we get close to 200 registration. Even this year, we got 200 registration where in the workshop, we are flooded with the students where we said, hope no more come because we don't have enough pizza for them. You know, you think, why would they want to come to this co-curricular activity when it's not part of their so-called degree? I think students do want to know about SDGs and they want to be part of the solution. So when we made them be creative and provide a bit more safer environment, they were able to flourish and want to learn more. And the fact that some of the solutions that first years come up with, that, for example, like Hunter Renewal and Snowy Hydro, they were elated. They were awed by the creativity that students can come up with. Whilst that they haven't implemented it yet, they do take it up to their business and say, this is a creative solution that students have come up with. And so I think the fact that it's been going on for 5 years, we had always 100+ registration, enough engagement from students, industry, because they come and say, I want to know how you're educating your students on this. So corporates are involved, community groups are involved. So in terms of assessing and the impact for this co-curricular, I think it's there. And I think one more, because we are involving student societies as well, because they organise, they come up with a teaching material, although we work on it together, I think it also nurtures leadership in these senior students. Indirectly, they are involved in building up their leadership skill, and so it has both direct and indirect learning. And you know, these SDG learning and teaching is not possible without partnerships. And I think, I'm sure with all the faculties, the partnership is critical.
Thanks, Natalie. Would anyone else like to add on to what you've already described, how you go about either evaluating impact or assessing students?
I would like to, with my first year course, when I took it over in 2021, it was called Fundamentals of Geology. And I worked with my daughter at the time, who was head of the Young Scientists Association. And we interviewed all the students in the Facebook group. There were 900 members, and we came up with the name of the course through engaging with the students. Then we looked at the content and what do the students want. And they want a pathway to solve the problems that they see. So we put more of that content in. In 4 years, the course has gone from 59 students to 150 this year. So by engaging with the students with what they want, putting it in an educational context for, and how it will give them good careers, you get buy-in from the students at a high level. And students coming up to me, one student, through the fourth year students, I'm now getting students from engineering, economics, medicine even, in there as general study. One of them said, gee, I wish I'd done this in first year at university. I would have changed my degree. You don't want to hear that, but that's really positive feedback. So it's the growth in student numbers, it's the positive comments from students coming up to me, and then seeing them go on to careers, that it's all working by incorporating the whole mindset of sustainability throughout the degree, even though I'm working with mining students, because mining careers will change through to providing the resources that we need for our sustainable societies. So it's a pretty cool time to be changing educational programs.
Thanks, Bryce.
We're talking about like SDGs in evaluation and in assessments.
So evaluation of the effectiveness of the education that you provide in sustainability, and how you go about it, how you might assess these skills in your courses.
Yeah, so I would think like two important ways that we can help students or learn about SDG and assess what they have learned about SDG. In business school, one example is that in business school, all students need to learn about like how to analyze the business environment, right? So SDG as an overarching framework can be applied to business environment analysis. So I remember one of the course what the course is doing is to analyze a particular company's business environment and using the SDG framework, and teach the incoming students about SDG as a framework for analyzing business environments. So that assessment is quite successful. Another way to do that is you partner with some organizations and give students business challenges that's related to SDG. So in that way that they learn about business knowledge, and at the same time, they have to apply the business knowledge to a SDG relevant context.
Thanks. I'll just hand over to you.
I'll keep my one, thank you. So I'm not going to talk about my courses because I haven't necessarily done a lot of evaluation of what the students actually take away in SDGs, but I wanted to mention a colleague, Helen Rutledge from School of Chemical Engineering, who has been doing some student surveys throughout the different years. The surveys are still ongoing, but I am very excited to see the results when they come out. But a broader method as well that we've used a few times but haven't used recently is Sully test. If anybody's familiar with Sully test, it's I'm not going to get this right, but you could Google it later, but they have a test called TASK, and it's designed not only to assess students' understanding of different areas, it's founded on the SDGs, but from a teaching perspective, it's also really useful as a teaching tool. So the way that the questions are written are really descriptive, and so you can get a good understanding not only of what the students know at that time, but also it can educate them as well. So we've used that in previous years for a few different courses, and it was quite interesting, the results. The first year students seemed to know a lot more than the fourth year students, which was interesting, but we haven't followed it up.
Thanks for sharing that, Ruth. I think as we've all gathered from the conversations, there's multiple aspects when we come to think about education for sustainability. It's one thing finding opportunities in our existing curriculums to incorporate some of these concepts. It might be through new courses, entire courses focusing on sustainability, or different lessons, or even individual activities, but also equally important that we measure the effectiveness of what we are doing in some way. Now, unfortunately, we're kind of coming towards the end of our session. So just as a very quick walk down the aisle, would you like to share one piece of advice that you'd like to share with anyone in the audience who are either already teaching sustainability or would like to get started on incorporating some of these concepts into their teaching? One very brief takeaway point. Would you like to start, Ruth?
I'll start so then I can get in first. There's already a lot of amazing things happening. So definitely talk to colleagues. I think there's even a new EF community of practice as well, so everybody should join that. Dr. George. Yep, that's me done.
Thank you. I guess it's around how explicitly you integrate SDGs into the curriculum. This discussion has been how we explicitly integrate and articulate SDGs. I also feel, though, we have a cohort of students today who are very familiar with many of the principles and ideas embodied in the SDGs, and the question is it, whether we make all those explicit connections or whether we simply reinforce the positive trajectory around climate and sustainability and equity in many of the practices that we engage with as teachers and educators.
Okay, my advice is to repeat what has been said. First is to join the new community of practice, SDG Education Sustainable Development Community of Practice. That's a very good way to learn more about how you embed like SDGs in your education. Second is to explicitly link SDGs to your current content. I believe you already have done so many amazing educations, and a lot of contents may have already have connections with SDGs. The only step to do is to explicitly say that in your course, right? So put a SDG logo or whatever logo in related to SDG. You have like 17 choices, right? So put one of the logo of the SDGs in your slide and make the explicit connection.
I'm going to repeat much that I said before because I think it's so important. Leverage the passion that the students have to want to change the world. Then provide them the skills and show them the pathway by which they can bring about change. A lot of the students don't realise how close we are in Australia to being able to, if you come back to degrees of separation, you can go and talk to your politicians, you can go and talk to your councillors, you can go and talk to people in government, you can talk to people in industry very easily. And you can implement change if you've got the knowledge and the advice that's going to help have a constructive solution. So I really talk to the students about that constructive solution and finding the pathways that they can then implement their passion to bring about that change. And that's really working well. So.
Okay, I'll be very quick. First of all, get your students involved in teaching SDG, not just for them to learn about it, get them involved in the actual teaching processes. Number two, you have to get businesses involved, corporates involved, so that they can see how this is being implemented and where it goes. Number three, to have innovative teaching practices integrating SDG, you need funding. I'm from School of Banking and Finance. So you need funding, which means you have to, for example, these initiatives that I've done, it was funded by business school SDG, EDI. So, you have to start talking, not only your colleagues, but people who have money, so you can put that into practice for your innovation teaching or any kind of initiative that you want to do. So these are my 3 tips.
Thanks, everyone. So hopefully this discussion has sparked some new ideas in you, given you some food for thought or some new ideas that maybe you can bring to your classroom, to your work, whatever the context is. I guess it's important that we remember that even if it's like a small change that we make, it can have a much larger impact. And it's all about sharing the message of, I guess, in raising awareness about sustainability, bringing about that transformation in thinking and encouraging, motivating acts that contribute to sustainability, and through these actions ensuring a much more sustainable future for pretty much everyone. So thank you so much to the panel for sharing your experience, insights with us and your time, and for being a wonderful audience. We didn't have, unfortunately, time for any questions, but the panelists will be around if you have any questions to ask. So thank you. Hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.